All right, here we are back for round two. BT's Activate. It's Marc
PT's
Headley.
activate. That intro always cracks me up. It's just not only because I'm in it acting the fool, but also it's just funny.
You got to find the moments to laugh, right? It's a very
Yes.
serious subject otherwise. So you got
Yeah.
to find
That's
some
what I
joy.
say all the time. I say you can't talk about this stuff and not, joke a little bit because it's kind of depressing.
Yeah, it can be. I
Especially if you're there for 15 years.
I can only imagine. The vocals on that song is me and my mum.
Oh, really?
Because my mum's
That's
a singer, right? So I said, "Mum, would you mind recording, the Power Rangers song, but Power Thetans instead?" She was like, "I'm on it." Within like a couple of
nice.
hours, I had this recording.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Your
Yeah.
mom's so cool like that. She'll be like, okay, I'm up for a little bit of nonsense.
Before we get started, let's say hello to some of the people in the chat. We've got Claire here saying BT's Activate. Of course, Todd Johnson, my BTs are tingling. We have John in the house. We have Bok Buddy, Betsy Sue, some really good familiar faces. Good to see everyone. Thank you so much for joining. This is part two. If you haven't seen the first episode, I suppose is the right word, Mark and I spoke about the IAS event and some of the shenanigans that happened behind the scenes. And this is a follow-up to that, because as soon as we finished that stream, Mark, you said to me, we only just scratched the surface. There's so many more stories that we didn't tell. So I thought, now we have a date for this year's IES event, and the protest is being planned. It's just a couple of weeks away, October 31st. I thought, let's hear some more stories. So
Sure.
what have you got for us, Mark? What was it like behind the scenes at the IES event?
Well, for the IAS event, it's a different event than we would normally do because we literally do have to fly all the way over to the UK from California when I was there. But for a bit of time, I was a stage manager on the events, and then I was also the quality control gold. It was called Gold QC Gold, the quality control for Golden Arrow Productions. So back in the early days, I want to say like in the early 90s, mid 90s, the events would sort of be simulcast around the world. So if you did an event in the States, there would be the same truck that did the mixing of all the cameras, the cutting and editing of all the cameras live. They would be connected to a satellite broadcast truck that would park right next to it, and we would uplink the event via satellite live to all of the organizations so they could watch it at the same time. But for the UK event, we would have to broadcast to do an uplink after the event was over. They would edit some of the videos, like if David Miscavige flubbed a line or he coughed or did something, they'd cut that out and tweak it. And sometimes if he really messed up a line or the graphics on the side screens were messed up while the cameras were on him, then they would, after the event was over, they'd get rid of all the public, all the Scientology members. They'd be like, everybody go over to the tent for the reception or whatever, but get out of the hall. And then David Miscavige would redo that part of his speech, and they would make sure the visual's correct, or he would reread the line if he mispronounced somebody's name or whatever. And then they'd edit that into the event. And then there'd be a crew of us that would go to London. And it was this place, I think it was called Telecine. That was the name of it. I want to say they had a lizard as their logo. And we would go to this place, and at that place, we would uplink from their facility to a satellite, and then the organizations, like in the US or wherever, they would just record the event so that they could then play it back for their people the next week or the next day or whenever their local events were. But this one time we went to London, and for some reason, whether it was weather or there was something up with the satellites, it was something up with the uplink or something wrong with the downlink in New York or in LA or wherever they were recording it. And I think at this particular one, not only was the event edit late, so let's say the event ends at 10 o'clock. it could take an hour to edit that, or it could take 2 hours. But then once it's edited, it has to be output. This was before nonlinear editing. These were doing tapes. So they'd have to re-output it, and the event could be 2-3 hours long. So I think at this particular time, we missed one of our uplink. When you do satellite, and back in the old days, when you would do satellite broadcasts, you would basically reserve like a 4-hour window of uplink time. And then if you missed that, then you were out. That was it. It was done. You couldn't do it. And there was this guy named Jason Bennick, and he was at Golden Era Productions. He was a Sea Org member, but he was what was called the general manager. And he was over all of the audiovisual divisions of Golden Era Productions. And he was basically screaming and yelling at this company that we had hired, that you guys have to give us a link. And he was going pretty aggro on these guys and trying to force them to give us a new window or an open. And they're like, you missed your window. We have other clients that are in that window. We can't bump them. They have events and their stuff's all been scheduled. Just because you missed your schedule. And he went off on these guys, and that kind of burned us, because they weren't even willing to work with us at all. Like, screw you guys. You paid, you missed your window. Get the F out of here, kind of thing. And the reason I remember this one in particular is because somebody had to get on a Concorde and take the edit and fly it to New York, and then do an uplink in basically what they figured out was, listen, the events aren't going to be for another day. So if we get on a Concorde, we will get to New York in time to do a new uplink so they can record it before their event that night.
That's insane. I mean, when I was on staff, I think this stems from security threat. I was speaking to Rachel Hastings, who was on the Gold or SMP shoot team. And, she was telling me very similar stories about re-recording elements of, Miscavige's speak because he messes things up or whatever. And she alluded to the fact that it was a security risk, because when I was on staff, we would have the event at London Org, a week or two later. So we'd invite all the public who couldn't be there in person, and we play the video. And it was a DVD that was produced, that was given to all the local orgs. But as soon as we'd played the event, we had to send it back to Gold International Management. We weren't allowed to keep a hold of it. And the only person that was allowed to touch that DVD was the director of special affairs. I think because they were paranoid of someone getting a hold of it and leaking it to the internet, because that's happened a couple of times.
Yeah, that's how that Tom Cruise turtleneck video, the one where he's like, when you come across an accident, if you're a Scientologist, you're the only person that can help. Well, that was from an org that got that IAS event in 2004, and they just copied it. And so the DVD was accounted for, but there's no watermarks. There's no tech built into the DVD that they got. So essentially, if somebody copied it, it was like, well, there's 150 DVDs that went out. So who knows which one got copied. So the way they solved that was then they only sent it to the person who basically was working for the Office of Special Affairs, Scientology's dirty tricks department. And so that was their way of doing that. But in the old days, which is kind of funny, because in the old days, if we were doing an uplink, if you had a satellite system that was compatible with what we were doing the downlink, it wasn't necessarily secure. But if you had one of these big KU band or C band satellites, you could tune to that channel at that time, and you could just record the event yourself. Yeah. But it was sort of, you had to really know when it was happening and what channel and what band and what satellite. But either way, but in that case, so we were going to do this thing. So I basically was all ready to go. Like, I'm going to go on a Concorde. And at the time, I want to say a Concorde ticket was $5,000.
And for a Sea Org member who, you've traveled the world working for Scientology, like, you're not used to luxury. And Concorde was a luxury way of traveling, right? I bet that was an amazing experience.
Well, yeah, but I never ended up going. By the time I was just about to go to the airport and I had my passport, they gave me, all the stuff I needed. I had all the tapes. It was like, okay, if we're gonna do this, it's gonna have to be like in the next hour, we're gonna make a call. And basically they had convinced another satellite company or another uplink, or somebody figured it out that we could do another upload in London somewhere that we hadn't burned, someplace we hadn't shit all over the place. This is Jason Bennett guy. By the way, Jason Bennett, he left, and I did a show on a radio station in Los Angeles called KFI AM 640, and the specific show was called Coast to Coast AM, and it was sort of this syndicated show that talked about aliens and weird sci-fi stuff. And he called in when I was doing the show, and we had it out. But he lives in Florida now. I think he lives in Clearwater. He works for a Scientology owned company, and it's like a car sales software company or something like that. But I think we've told a few stories about him on his channel, because somebody that worked with him at one of the places called in or wrote in and told us these crazy stories about him when he was working at that place. So just funny stuff. But the other thing I wanted to say is sometimes when we do these events, there would be protesters at the event.
Mm-hmm.
And the Sea Org members were not allowed to interact or see these people. Sometimes they might have had like a, free Xenu or something on their placards, on their protest signs. And so we weren't allowed to even see those signs. And that's it's kind of a weird position where if the protesters are out there, we don't know what they're going to do. We don't know what they're going to say. We don't know what they're going to yell at people. So in the Sea Org, they basically just do a lockdown inside, close all the blinds, close all the windows, close everything, so we cannot hear or see what's going on outside. Because if we do, we're going to hear about like OT3 stuff, body thetans and Lord Xenu and all that stuff. And of course that would traumatize us beyond.
You'd get pneumonia and die, right? According to
get pneumonia and die if you hear about Xenu and OT3 before you're ready for it. You have to go through all the levels before that to be able to hear about, the Galactic Confederacy.
and how did you know that protests were going on? Because St. Hill is very remote. It's in the countryside in Sussex. For those of you who haven't been there, it's like a compound down a narrow country lane, and there are multiple entrances, but they only really use one because the other one is reserved for L. Ron Hubbard's exclusive use, even though he died in 1986. So where the protests historically have happened, by the main entrance. So anybody entering or leaving the property will see the protest. But if you're a Sea Org member, you're arriving before the protest starts and you're leaving after the protest finishes. And you're not allowed to talk about things like protesting or stuff that's considered N theta, bad news in Scientology. So how would you know that a protest was taking place? Was it just from the signs of like the place going on lockdown, or did sort of someone come up to you and say, hey, don't go outside?
Yeah, we would basically be alerted to it whenever. I want to say for all of the events that I was part of that we did at St. Hill in East Grinstead, we would stay at a place in town called the Brambletie, and they had like little motels next to it, and it was like a pub, kind of like, I don't know what you call it over there, but it was like a pub that had a bar and you could get food in there. And I always remembered it because in the Sea Org, and especially in the UK, you're not getting a really nice breakfast as a Sea Org member. And so we would eat at the Brambletie, and it was like a proper English breakfast.
Well, English breakfast, right? Yeah.
Beans and ham and eggs and sausages. And it was like a whole thing, and tomatoes, grilled tomatoes. And it was just like, this is the most amazing thing ever. So, as a Sea Org member, if you get to bed at 4:00 in the morning and you need to be ready for your ride at 8:00, you're running out there at 7:59 in 30 seconds. But in the UK, no, we're getting up at 6:30 because we're going to have a 45-minute breakfast, and we're going to be like, it's basically like you're eating for the whole rest of the day. It's going to be the most amazing meal. But usually before we would head to the property or wherever we were, if we were going there. Oh yeah, Brambletie is a hotel in Forest Row 3 miles.
There we go.
There you go. So I
There we
was
go.
right, Brambletie.
Yeah.
Sometimes I worry that I remember the names wrong or whatever, but you know, this was in 1996 or whatever, 1995. Only, what is that? It's only like 30 years ago or something like that.
It's when I was born in 1995.
Yeah, so I was eating English breakfast at the Brambletie back then when you were popping out. Anyway, so yeah, so somebody would tell us, like whoever the person was driving the Sea Org van or whatever transport they had for us, they would say, "Hey, listen, there's a bunch of SPs on the highway. Just ignore them. We're going to try to get past them as quickly as possible," or you know, whatever. It wasn't necessarily a protest during the event proper. It was sometimes the protesters would be there for days leading up until the event. They'd just be hanging out, you know, like let the Sea Org members go, or you know, whatever. Free. I don't think we didn't have a free Shelley back then, but there was also the Lisa McPherson thing over the years in Florida when we would go to the Ruth Eckerd Hall in in Tampa. There would be people kind of outside. And this is the thing I wanted to say. There's Office of Special Affairs staff members, specifically a woman by the name of Kirsten Catano. Her last name has changed many times over the years, but when we were there, she was Kirsten Catano. But they have this book at OSA. It's called The Rogues Gallery. And they have a picture and basically a breakdown. It's like a headshot with dirt.
So I've seen this, right? Because this book is in every org on the reception desk around the world, right? And although I wasn't the receptionist, there was the test center on Tottenham Court Road, which is separate to the main org in London. And we just used it to sell books. Like it's this whole building. It used to be the org and then turned into a life improvement center. So generally it was just me and like maybe 2 other staff members there most days. Trying to body route people in, you know, giving them flyers and saying, "Hey, come in for a personality test," or "Do you want a stress test?" and trying to sell them the book. But it meant that quite often I was on reception duty in this building, and literally in the top drawer on the left-hand side, for anyone that goes to Tottenham Court Road, top drawer, left-hand side, it's a ring binder, and in it is a page on each SP with their mugshot and explaining why they're an SP, and it basically says what to do if they show up, and it's either go on lockdown, call the director of special affairs, or immediately call the police, or whatever it is. And that was there when I was on staff. Like, this is a thing in every
org. So at OSA they have that book, but they know all the pictures. Like if they see a person, they go, "Oh shit, that's SP number 57." You know, we gotta. and at an event, it's a very tricky thing because there's public everywhere. And so when this person, they can park and they can do all their stuff. And then when they get in there, it's like, we gotta get this person out, but we can't make a big scene of it. We just have to kind of figure it out. But so usually like at the Shrine Auditorium or Ruth Eckerd Hall, they would have a main entrance, maybe like 1 or 2 doors where everyone had to file through. And there would be Office of Special Affairs people on both sides of those doors, just looking at everybody to see what their deal is.
And then I think IAS event, like the OSA bosses, Janet and Graham, who will submit privacy complaints if I use their last names, because that's what happens every time I say their full name on this channel. But Janet and Graham, hi guys, I know you watch the channel. They stand on the gates of St. Hill the entire weekend. They do not move, and they keep a very close eye on every single protester to make sure that we're not going to jump the fence or anything like that. And you know, that's not our intention. We never have, and we never will. But they're on high alert the whole time.
Yeah, it's kind of wild if you think about it, that they have that for every event. They're worried about an SP getting in there, and or somebody that's in this rogues gallery. And the thing that I always thought was funny is that I want to say that rogues gallery was like a 2-inch binder back in the early 90s, and now it's a lot. I mean, it's a big. It's a lot of it's not, we're not talking about 20 pages. There could be
It
100
was about
pages
this
in this
thick, the
site.
one in London North.
Yeah,
Yeah.
double-sided, it was like, what the hell? There's this many people that we have
Yeah.
to watch out for, and I don't even know how in the orgs, I don't know how they could possibly keep track of that because, somebody grows a beard and gets a haircut, and that's a whole put some glasses on. It's
Yeah.
like, they're gonna Clark Kent the other guy's like, I don't know who that is.
And what was your experience as a SEAL member, like working at this event and having seen the international base, having lived there and worked there over in California? I don't know if you'd been on the RPF by this point, but like having had exposure to that high security environment and then coming over to the UK, the IAS event, it's this big thing that Dave Miscavige attends. Like what did you notice from a security standpoint that was different or interesting or things you thought were a bit weird?
Well, for the IAS event, it's actually the smallest event that they do. Like relatively to like the Ruth Eckerd Hall, the Shrine Auditorium, you're packing thousands and thousands and thousands of people into this event. But when we would do it at St. Hill in the early days, it was just a great hall. There wasn't even a tent.
It was like 500
just
or 1,000 people or something, right?
I
Yeah.
think the great hall fits like 700 people.
Right.
I think that's maximum. Just jam them, sardine them in there.
Yeah.
So that event was always kind of like, why are we doing it? We're going to video it and then everybody gets to see it. But it was hard to make that event big and look like, when you're doing the Shrine Auditorium, the stage is like 100 feet wide. The Great Hall, it's like 30 feet wide. So it's like,
I suppose that all changed when they moved into the tent, right? Because the tent has a capacity of like 3,000, it's a huge stage with a big set. And, it may not necessarily be as big as the Shrine Auditorium or Ruth Eckerd Hall, but it is the biggest event in Scientology in Europe, right?
Yeah. That's another thing. So it didn't always used to be in England. It would be in a European org's country, it'd be in a European city, but not always St. Hill. We did it in Denmark. I want to say in 95. Was it 95, 94, 95? I think it was in Copenhagen at just a concert hall there. But even when you say the Great Hall is, let's say it's 700 or it's 1,000, whatever it is, it was tiny. But even if you say, the tent holds 3,000 people, that's still tiny, 3,000 people. And but the idea was that we had to have an event at least once a year in Europe so that all the European Scientologists could go to that event, whether it was in Copenhagen or if it was in Spain or wherever. And then only when it became just sort of a set thing. We can't keep moving this every year because whenever you move an event hall, then the event crew have all changed. The hall's now changed. You're just tempting fate that there's going to be something that's going to get screwed up on this event. So it helps if you just do it in the same place, try to keep the same people going to the same location every year. Then we minimize the nonsense factor a little bit. But I don't know. The thing that was just odd to me for doing that event is that we didn't know most of the people we didn't know. So when you're doing the events in Florida, it's the usual suspects that are coming to that event. And most of the celebrities, they would try to get to that event. So you'd get John Travolta and Kelly Preston and, Jenna and Bodie Elfman. It was always these guys. But then sometimes when you'd go over to the UK, that list would definitely fall off. They're not all going out to the UK to go to this event. And then mainly the people we would see at that event were sort of the richest Scientologists from all over Europe are the people that are the main target of that event because they're going to do a lot of fundraising at this event, millions and millions of dollars of fundraising. So it was always interesting to see when we would go there, like these are the guys we don't normally see at the events. And they're just, it's almost like, how did they get these guys into Scientology? Like it's a family that owns a textile, manufacturing company or something. And you're just like, what? They donated $5 million or whatever. You're just like, this is weird. And And also, there's another thing that would happen at these events. I meant to tell this on the last one, but the IASA, the International Association of Scientology Administrations, is located, its home base is on the Freewinds. And so it's in kind of like an international waters, kind of like, you know, can't
Scientology's
really,
cruise ship, right? Yeah.
yeah. But that's where all this money goes into this, like, kind of like an offshore situation. That's not really controlled by anybody. But in the UK, that is where I want to say that is where the International Association of Scientologists was formed, and they all
Yeah.
signed this plaque and whatever. So they have an IAS office in the UK, and it was run by a woman by the name of Janet Light at the time, and there were a few other women that worked with her in that office. But when we would go for these events, there was, I don't know if it was the charity ball or if it was the patron dinner or something, but they would all dress up and they would get these fancy hats, and it was like a big to do. But we're Sea Org members, and then we see these guys, they're all Sea Org members too. And it's like, where are they getting money for a $2,500 hat for this gig? You know, it was like, it was very odd that they were dressed up and doing this whole thing, and they would only do that for this one event in England. So it was just a weird thing where we'd all be like, do they have that much money that they can all just wear all this fancy stuff? And also, why? This is weird, you know. But they had to hobnob with all these people, and I want to say it was probably the patrons dinner that they would do this for. But then it was sort of a thing where a bunch of people at this event would do this, and I don't know if this is some kind of UK thing or something. Maybe you can tell us. It's like, yeah, it was like the Kentucky Derby, but the English version of that in the UK. It was just like, this is super weird for Sea Org members to be doing this.
Yeah, so the IAS weekend is there's 3 different events. There's the main IAS event on the Friday, which is where David Miscavige trots out on stage and gives this 3-hour speech about how Scientology's expanded and blah blah blah. That's the big main thing. And then the Saturday is the patrons ball, which is the big black tie fancy dinner, and that's where the money is made. So this is like, they get a catering company in that do like Michelin star kind of meals. It's usually a 4 or 5 star, like the sort of course meal, and you have to wear black tie, ball gowns, fancy hats, the whole thing. So it's probably that day you're talking about, because on the Sunday is the charity concert, which is where Scientology donates £50,000 to local charities, and it's meant to be a community event. And this is where you see the East Grinstead town mayor invited, and local dignitaries and politicians and such. And the whole purpose of that event is just to kind of wine and dine the important people in the area, to try and show them that Scientology is an amazing organization that's helping all these local community projects. And they donate 50 grand, but they don't mention that the day before they made $50 million in donations at the patrons ball, right?
In Scientology, that they call that safe pointing.
Yes.
You want to make sure that everybody knows that the things, and they survey these towns that they're in. They say, what does the town hate and what does the town love? And so then you say, well, they hate kids getting on drugs, and they love supporting the local homeless shelter or this or whatever. And so Claire was at the original event where they signed the charter. Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Wow. Good Claire, you have to come on and tell us the story.
Yeah.
We'll do a live stream together, maybe.
Good for you, Claire. You were there while a bunch of fuddy-duddies signed a paper. Anyway, but yeah, they would then at these events, they push the things that Scientology is doing what you love, and also Scientology is trying to get rid of or fight the things that you hate. And so and they have different words for different parts, but it's basically like the buttons that you can push to make those people like you more. Yeah. And so this charity thing is just a big safe pointing thing. And the funny thing is they constantly have to do these because people are constantly finding out the nonsense that they're up to. So they always have to be pushing, no, we're the good guys, we're not the bad guys, because everything that comes out about them is like, no, these guys are the bad guys. You shouldn't be supporting them. So it's also funny that like just in the course of your protesting and uncovering documents and correspondence, you can really see that they've safe pointed a fair number of people in East Grinstead that where they actually are doing their bidding and trying to cover up and trying to keep quiet the things that are going on, because Scientology is benefiting them by, donating to this or letting the mayor dance with Tom Cruise's or John Travolta, or, his wife dance with John Travolta. So, yeah, it's going to be hard. I think it's going to be harder and harder for them to safe point, because in the back of these people's mind, they know about the things that are happening, and they've heard enough stories, and they've, Scientology, my friend and I, so my friend from England, who's staying with us right now, he used to be at the base too. And we were talking the other day about, some of the craziness and things like that. But when we were in the car, we asked Grok from X, the AI, we just asked it like, hey, what do you know about Scientology and David Miscavige? And it just went off for 5 minutes about how if you do it in unhinged mode, it might be a little much for some people, but we did it in unhinged mode. And but it was funny because I was telling him, if you have a social media platform, or if you have a channel that gets a good amount of views, you actually get an option, an ability to opt in to let AI scrub all of your content and learn about whatever it is you have your content on. Well, Scientology has maybe 0.0001 content that's actually useful, or has any information. Most of the stuff they have is just kind of like nebulous, like it means nothing.
Yeah.
It's almost incomprehensible to the AI, because they're not saying anything about anything, just platitudes about how they're awesome. But there's so much content on the internet of people telling their stories and what happened at this event, or what happened in the Sea Org at this base. And that is what all these AIs are being trained on. So they know what Scientology is. And I haven't found an AI that I can ask that will explain what Scientology is without talking about the abuses, without talking about David Miscavige beating people, without talking about Body Thetans and Lord Xenu, because all of that is factual information that's on the internet.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy that they basically are using L. Ron Hubbard's 1960s technology in 2025, and it's like, that ain't working no more.
No, precisely.
So
and talking of David Miscavige, like what I never met Miscavige, right? Thankfully, you worked very closely with him, both at the Gold, the international base, and obviously filming him at these events. Thinking specifically about the IAS event, what was he like to work with? Because we've heard these stories of how he physically beats his staff. Mike Rinder told the story of how, I think it was at an IAS event at St. Hill, certainly, there was a time when Miscavige ordered that he get thrown into the lake, and it was winter. It had frozen over, this icy lake, as punishment. What was your experience working with Miscavige in the UK at St. Hill?
He was diabolically cruel at these events. Most of the time, the event speakers would write their own speech, or their speech would be written for them by the script writing or the event script writing department. And then they would have to work with the script writer to kind of make it their own. And they would have their speech, and they would have to submit those to David Miscavige. And David Miscavige would be like, you've got too much good stuff in your speech. I want that in my speech. So he would cherry pick their speeches for all the good stuff and get rid of it, and then put it in, and they would combine that into his intro speech. Or if he was giving an award, they would kind of weave that into his speech, or whatever's normally the way it would go is COB, David Miscavige, chairman of the board, Religious Technology Center, his fake Navy. He would introduce the event. So it would be called the COB intro speech. So he would introduce the event and then get the event going. And then he would say, for more information on how we're reaching out into this field, please introduce Mike Rinder or Dave or, Dave Bloomberg or Ray Midoff or whoever it was that was kind of the one who was going to do the speech for that subject. And then they would do their speech, and then they would leave, and then he would come out and introduce a video that would have to do with that. So there was many of these speech modules that would get done for an event, and they would practice and practice and practice their speech. And then the days leading up into the event, he would re-edit and modify and rewrite all these speeches so that now during the rehearsals, the speech is completely different than what they've been rehearsing for weeks to do at the event. And arguably they're not going to know it that well, and they're going to mess up, or they're going to say it the wrong inflection on the wrong word, or go down instead of up, or go up instead of down. And he would sit there in the front row and just basically dunk on them for their entire speech. And if they stopped to listen to him dunking, then he'd yell at them like, "Why are you stopping? Keep going." And if they kept going while he was dunking on them, he'd be like, "You're not even going to stop and listen to what I'm trying to tell you." And so there was no winning the thing. And I don't remember. I remember it happened at the Shrine. I don't remember if he brought these to the UK or not, but he had marionette puppets, like caricatures of the speakers. He had those made. We're talking like somebody who makes Pinocchios made these things for like professional puppets. They weren't they weren't marionettes. I think they were the ones that are like a dummy, like a ventriloquist dummy. And he made these of Heber, Guillaume Lesev, the executive director international, Mike Rinder, I want to say Ray Midoff, and Mark Yeager, maybe a few others, but there was like 4 or 5 of these things, I think. And when they would go up on the stage, he would get out their puppet and he would be like, "Oh, da, 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 da," while they're on
It's like a
stage.
child. That's the sort of thing a child would do, right?
Well, a lot of people mention this, and I don't know if it's a developmental thing or whatever, but if you joined the Sea Org when you were 12 or 13, then you sort of your social development is kind of stunted, because you're now in this world that doesn't have that. You're not teaching somebody, "Oh, you're not supposed to do this," or "You're not supposed to do that," or you're kind of stunted. So you have these people that kind of freeze frame that whenever they started in the Sea Org. And I want to say David Miscavige kind of became a professional auditor when he was like 14 or something like that. And then he was in the Sea Org, I think, by the time he was 15 or 16. So it is very sort of like a sophomoric bully mentality that he has to this day, where it, like in a meeting or at the event or wherever, it's like whatever question he asks you, you're going to give him the wrong answer. And you know that going into the conversation, that it's probably not going to end well for you. The chances of it ending up bad are much greater than it ending up good. And you just hope you're not the one singled out in the meeting, or singled out in the conversation, or in the review of the rehearsal, or whatever it is. Everybody's sort of on pins and needles that they're going to get lit up. And if you were at an event in the UK or anywhere, you're basically far from home, from the California desert, the secret gold base in Gilman Hot Springs, California. And so if you messed up bad enough, they would do like it would be called being sent back in a body bag, and they would literally have somebody from security take you to the airport and watch you get on the plane, and then they'd have somebody at the other end to watch you get off, or they would send security personnel to fly with you all the way back. And if you got sent back from another place by the order of David Miscavige, that was called getting sent back in a body bag. And you basically, you'll probably be off post when you get back. You'll probably, You could go to the rehabilitation project force. You could be a deputy D-weeder the next day, or washing dishes for 5 years. So it's sort of like, this is the worst. Now, I've basically been shamed in front of everybody, the event crew, and then getting sent back that way shames you to everyone at the base that you're basically just a complete screw up. And so there was always that possibility when we were in the UK doing the event. Like, you cannot mess up, otherwise you're going to get sent back in a body bag.
Because this is the thing that I really want to highlight, because I know that, local councillors at various levels of government, local officials watch this channel. And, I'm liaising with a number of people in preparation for this year's protest. And I know that, the mayor of East Grinstead often goes to this event and accepts a check for his charity on stage and shakes hands with Miscavige. And for them, what they see is this lovely event with really nice, shiny, happy people with smiles on their faces that are trying to change the world and donating money to charity. It's this shiny, glossy look that they get, and it's all a PR front. It's Scientology showing these people the best of their existence. It's all a front. And what I really want these people to understand is the other side of things, what goes on behind the scenes. When you, as a counselor, go to this event, it's not just a case of listening to Miscavige speak. Behind the scenes, people are being punished, right?
Yeah.
People are being thrown in the lake as punishment if they do something wrong. And it could be like a minor mess up in the lighting or something, right? Like, this is what I want people to understand, is these are victims of modern slavery, and Scientology will do everything they can to try and avoid the counselors and local officials from seeing that side of things. But it absolutely goes on.
100%. And not only are they putting on a show for these public representatives, the town representatives, they're putting on the show for the Scientologists. They're showing Scientologists, look at all the stuff that your donations are doing, and look at all the good we're doing, and look at all this, when it's really infinitesimal compared to like actually doing anything. Like, you passed out 10,000 Way to Happiness booklets, and 9,950 were thrown in the garbage right after they handed them out, or just dumped on the city sidewalks to litter up the city. Now the city has to spend money cleaning up all Scientology's trash. And so there's always they spin it in the most positive way possible, but in reality, without even it being spun, it's basically nothing. Your dollars, your millions of dollars, were completely wasted. And even those donations, that's what's funding this event, where we're telling you about all the good things we did and all these fluffy Hollywood movie magic videos. So it's not just a show for the town, or the government, or whoever is being shown that this is an amazing thing. The people that are attending the event are also under the same spell, believing this, what is it called?
Acceptable truth.
Suspended disbelief, or whatever. Like, there's nothing good. These guys aren't doing anything that's valuable to anybody. It's basically a giant waste of everybody's time. And most of these public facing programs and activities are just meant to get people into Scientology. It's a starter. They call it an intro route. So you can get people into Scientology through Narconon. You can get people into Scientology through Applied Scholastics. You can get people in from CCHR, Citizens Commission on Human Rights. These are all just front groups meant to safe point Scientology and eventually get these people into Scientology through the thing that they're passionate about. Their personal, I don't want kids to be on drugs. Oh, these guys are doing, that's Youth for Human Rights and Youth for a Drug-Free USA or world, or whatever it is. Those are the people that are, they're playing to their buttons to get them into Scientology. That's all they want to do.
What's like the wildest or craziest story or memory you have from the IAS event at St. Hill?
The one I told last time of the projection guy was a pretty good one.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I remembered a story, but I don't think it was. I think it was at an IAS event, but it was aboard the Free Winds.
Right.
And David Miscavige was on stage speaking, and one of the light in the at the Free Winds, it's in this place called the Starlight Cabaret. It's a tiny, tiny little cruise ship theater where they would do like comedy shows or whatever before it was the Free Winds, or it was that kind of feel. And a light above David Miscavige caught on fire during the event. There's a light just got next to something and started on fire.
Which, may I just interject, is not anybody's fault. That's not somebody setting it on fire. It's not someone deliberately messing up the show. It's just something that happens when you work in events sometimes.
It was
right?
an accident, and maybe it could have been prevented. Maybe, who knows? Maybe the bulb went bad. I don't remember. But one of the lighting guys was up there in above this. And this is why I kind of think it could have been at the IAS event, because the stage is very small in St. Hill. And I don't think there was a catwalk in the cabaret, the Starlight Cabaret. But either way, he's at the podium, the light catches on fire, and the lighting guy has a fire extinguisher, and he shoots it at the light from up above, and it directly, like it couldn't have been more precise. It just nails David Miscavige. Like he's standing there talking, and there's somebody's like, "Sir, there looks like there's a light on fire," and he looks up and he just goes, just directly nails him with this.
I would pay money to see the video recording of that happening.
Well, I want to say, in the early days, there was a little bit of kind of joking with the highest level members of Scientology that would go to the Free Winds event. And maybe that's why I get it mixed up with the Free Winds, because they would show what was called a gag reel before the event, the event, and on the Free Winds, when they'd have this June 6th maiden voyage events, they would show all the fuck ups at the events, and they would show it. They would edit it into a reel of all these fuck ups that had happened at different events. And that thing was in that, where he's standing there and he's talking, and then all of a sudden just goes, "Sir," and he looks up and goes, but there were so many things that would happen like that it's kind of hard for me to pick out one thing, because at every event something crazy would happen like that. And not every event, but a lot of events, things would happen. We had, in the mid 90s, there was a big thing where they were doing pyro at events, and it was a nightmare for us here members, because you're going to set something on fire if you do pyro at an event. It was always like, oh, I hope we don't burn this place down. We would hire a professional pyrotechnics company, and it would be like usually during the opening of the event, where they would do some kind of musical number or marching band or dancers. And at the end of that, it would be like on a big drum hit, it would be like rockets would shoot out of the stage, and you're just like, what the hell? And then that sort of became kind of a dated thing. Like pyro was like, oh, we don't do pyro anymore. Oh, what do we do now? Now we do lasers. And so then there were laser shows at these events. And so there was always a chance that something was going to go horribly wrong with the lasers, because a lot of time in laser shows, besides the pyro show setting the place on fire, that was the main thing, or that the pyro would only go off on one side of the stage and not the other side of the stage. But that was similar when we started doing lasers at the events. The lasers usually made stuff, like they would draw things in the middle of the hall or whatever, and it would be like, whoa, and we'd fog the whole place up leading up to the start of the event. So it was a really cool thing. But then sometimes one laser would go out, or somebody backstage would bump a laser, and so then it would be off, and it would be like, oh god, we got to bolt those things to the stage, and da, da, da. But it was like, that's how it would be. It would be like the laser was off, somebody's going to the RPF for the lasers, or for the pyro, or for the curtain going down for a second before it went up. Or it was like in the overall scheme of things, this has nothing to do. It has no effect on anything anywhere. And someone's going to go to the RPF for 10 years because David Miscavige was a little sweaty because his makeup was the wrong, or it was this, the room was too hot, or whatever it was, any little thing like that, it would be like curtains for that person. And when you would think about it, you would just sit back and think about it, like, who cares? This is lame. This is a dumb reason for somebody to spend 10 years in a prison camp, Scientology prison camp, because they used the wrong base foundation on David Miscavige.
So these SEAL members are flown from all over the world to come and work at this event. And I'm guessing, based on their experience, or their history, sorry, they didn't get you guys like work visas, because if you're coming to work an event in the UK, you need a work visa. You can visit the UK as a US citizen, for up to 3 months without needing a visa as a tourist. But if you are engaging in some sort of work activity, even if you're a religious volunteer, you need a work visa. You can be sure as heck they're
Well,
not
don't you have to get paid?
Yeah, well, that too.
We weren't getting paid in the
No,
UK, so
you can be sure that these people aren't getting work visas to work at this event, and
no,
they're flown in.
I never once ever had a visa. And also,
No,
to be fair, a lot of Sea Org, and also the Sea Org members that are coming are almost all coming from California.
yeah,
They're not coming from any other place. They're all coming from one place. But when we would go over there, they would give us our passports for that trip. And then when we would return, we would have to turn our passports back in. So there were not a lot of people who just always had their passports. Maybe the video teams that flew, that's all they did was travel. They would a lot of times have their passports with them. But if they got messed up on a video, or they had to get recalled back to the property, then they definitely took their passports, because then people could basically, yippee-ki-yay, I'm out of here.
yeah.
And
So trying to prevent people escaping, right?
100%. You don't have any documents to be able to travel unless you're traveling on a sanctioned thing. And almost all of the time you'd be traveling with other Sea Org members. So it's a little harder to GTFO if you're like going to UK and there's a connecting flight in New York or something. There's not going to be a lot of opportunities for you to skedaddle somewhere. You're constantly going to be with people, and they're going to be if you go into the head or the bathroom or something, they're going to be waiting outside for you, so you guys can all go together, kind of thing. Everybody knows, keep an eye on everybody, because if somebody does escape, it's on the other people that are with them. It's on you if they skedaddle when you're out and about from the base.
So it sounds like, you're shipped over to this foreign country to work without the right visa. You're then put under immense pressure, scrutiny, time constraints. You're working 18-hour days solidly for a couple of weeks to pull off this event. At this event, for any small minor mistake, you could end up being sent home and put into this hard manual labor prison camp known as the RPF. But somehow you make it through the event's over, you pack up and you get shipped back off home and start preparing for the next one, I imagine. It sounds like a horrible situation for these SEAL staff to be living in. And at the same time, you've got town councillors and mayors and dignitaries coming in and shaking hands and go, oh, isn't this wonderful? This is a great community-led organization, right? That's the picture I want to paint, is the difference between behind the scenes and front of house.
Yeah. And to be fair, and my friend and I were discussing this just a few days ago, which is, when you're at the base, you can't go anywhere, you can't do anything. And David Miscavige is just there full time, just terrorizing everybody. When you're preparing for the event, everything up. But there's a little window where the event is going to happen on the 31st. Well, people have to go out there 2 weeks before that, so that the rehearsals are ready when David Miscavige shows up the week before. And so sometimes there's like a week or so, a little bit more than a week, or maybe 2 weeks, or maybe 5 days, whatever, where you're not at the base, you're at this other place, but David Miscavige hasn't arrived there yet. And even though you're working and it's long hours and everything, you feel like, oh, we're being creative and we're making something, and this is like, it's a good feeling. And you don't even care about all the nonsense. It's just like, I can just do my thing without anybody harassing me, and just being able to do what I do really well. Like, a lot of people there are very creative in the field that they're doing, and that's why they're that in that position, because they're an amazing artist, either if it's lighting or if it's painting backdrops or whatever it is. But the second David Miscavige gets there, the whole vibe turns over into we're gonna get fucking crucified, like it's a different feeling. And that's the key thing that I wanted to make a point of is, not only are you a Sea Org member and you're working 120 hour a week, you're being paid, 36 cents an hour or whatever it averages out to, but you're being tormented by one person who's anybody in the Sea Org will tell you the one person they're really deathly afraid of is David Miscavige, because there's no policy, no Hubbard Scientology policy that governs him. He can do whatever he wants, and you don't get to argue or say, oh, that's not per policy, or, whatever. It's just like, he doesn't give a shit about that. If he says you're a piece of shit and you're going to the RPF, you're a piece of shit and you're going to the RPF, they'll sort out the paperwork and make it all make sense to everybody after the fact. But so, yeah, that is, if David Miscavige is there, there's Sea Org members that are under the gun to produce that event. And it's not pleasant, and it's not a joyful existence at that point. And especially if something goes wrong. If something goes wrong on the event, I want to say that is a big thing. If we were on an event and nobody fucked up, makeup did its job, stage, lights, costumes, teleprompter, lighting, camera, editing, if everything went perfect, David Miscavige would say at the end of the event, because it was a great event, you guys did great, you get to take the day off tomorrow. And so we would have a day off. Some of us had to do the broadcast that night, so we were up till 5, but we still got the day off the next day. And we would go to the beach. We'd go to Clearwater Beach if it was at the Fort Harrison Auditorium, or if it was in LA. I don't ever remember having a day in LA. But there was a time in 2000, I want to say it was that 2004 event, that Tom Cruise event. Yeah, it was that. Everybody got to spend the day in London the next day.
Wow.
And it was like, oh my God, this is a miracle. But so there were 7 events a year. I want to say we took a day off, maybe 3 or 4 of those. That when I was on them, we took in 7 events in a year. Over many years, we had like 3 days off, like where nobody did anything that was bad enough, or he didn't notice, or he noticed, but he was like, come, it wasn't that big of a deal, But I want to say, yeah, maybe 3. I remember we did one on the Freewinds, because I remember there's some pictures of me jet skiing somewhere in like an Aruba or Bonaire or Curacao somewhere. And then there was the London one. And I can't really remember any other ones besides those 2 that I just 100% remember. Everybody got a day off. But if one person messes up, that could basically burn it for everybody.
For the whole team.
Yeah, if there was one flub, then it could be like, and also, if the event went perfectly well and none of us knew that there was a mess up, and he didn't specifically order, you guys can get a day off, then we didn't get a day off, because our flights are already booked and everything's pretty pre-scheduled. If he says you can get a day off, then who cares about tickets? Who cares about schedules? It's all basically just thrown to the wayside, and those guys get an extra day off. And then sometimes also you get a day off. I don't have any money.
No, because you get paid $50 a week. Like, what are you going to do with that on your day off, right?
What am I'm not going to go out on the town. I'm going to, and even on that one day where the IAS event in UK, we got the day off. The IAS had to come with us so they could pay for everything. We weren't choosing. It was like, oh, we're going to this restaurant. Okay, good. And then you're kind of like hoping, like, are these fucking guys paying for this? Or this is like shrimp cocktails, fucking 18 pounds, like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, But so I do want to delineate. It's really the David Miscavige component, which makes everything horrible for the most part. A lot of Sea Org members like what they're doing, and they've been doing it for 20 years. They don't know anything else. They don't know the outside world. They don't have any connections to the outside world. So some people are like, well, why haven't they left? It's like, where are they going to go? There's no
They have
place.
nothing.
Yeah, there's
They have
no.
no one to call, no money, no housing. All of that stuff is supposedly provided by Scientology. You know, where you live, what you eat, you know, who you speak to is heavily controlled. So if somebody did think of leaving, they've got nothing. Like there's motion sensors around the perimeter of the property. If they
Yeah,
do manage to actually leave, where are they going to go? And that's why the Aftermath Foundation is so important, because it provides
yeah.
that support and the resource for those people.
That is one of the main components of why Sea Org members do not leave, because
Mm.
where are they going to go? They don't even think, and because you're brainwashed in the Sea Org, if you leave, you're going to be homeless, or you're going to flip burgers, or you're going to do whatever. I mean, for me, by the end in 2005, I was like, flipping burgers sounds pretty amazing to me. Even
Yeah.
homeless doesn't seem that bad compared to this place. I'd rather be homeless and happy than housed and miserable.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, having that component will maybe help some people. But even there's probably some other people, if they're in their 60s or their 70s and they've been in the Sea Org for 35 years,
Mm.
it's sort of like you do kind of you see that there's this sort of apathetic view of I couldn't even, it would be so much work and so much trouble, and then I won't be able to talk to my mom or my dad or my brother or my sister or my kids or whatever, that it's just like, there's, they've got him over a barrel on
Mm.
even thinking about leaving. And that's also a big thing in the Sea Org. If you have thoughts about leaving, that disqualifies you for many posts within the Sea Org if you've had thoughts about leaving. So it's like the thought police. If you tried to leave one time, or you tried to escape, or you blew for a week and then you were recovered, then you were disqualified from being in the executive division or the HCO division, or sometimes even the public division or whatever. You couldn't be in those positions if you had tried to escape
Mm.
or had thoughts of escaping. So you even so much so that you won't think about that. You think things are bad, you just automatically go optimistic, like, oh, well, they're so bad, at least it can't get worse. And it always gets worse.
Yeah.
But so just kind of a wild dynamic of these people that are being horribly abused, but they even if they came from somewhere else where working this much and getting paid nothing is better than where the country that they came from, where they couldn't even eat, or they were sleeping in a on the streets, or whatever it is. So it's better than that. I've risen in my position of life, because before I wouldn't even get three
But
hots and a cot.
that's why it's modern slavery, because I don't know about the legislation in the US, but in the UK there's certain sort of criteria to meet in order for something to be modern slavery, and one of them is being bounded. Like I think it's what's it called, bounded labor or something. It's where like you have to work because they've got something they're holding over you. And for a lot of people who have come from nothing, it's like, well, if you stop working for this organization, you go back to that. Because we're providing you housing and food and stuff, and
Yeah.
so a lot of people stay in because it's better than the life they were living before. But that doesn't change the fact they're being exploited, right?
Yeah. The other thing they do is they hold this familial connection thing up.
Mm,
So if you leave, you won't be able to talk to your family again.
mm,
When I was in the Sea Org, I could speak with all my family, but I didn't. There wasn't anything for me to talk to them about. I couldn't tell them what I was doing. I couldn't tell them where I was working. It would just be like, things are going great. Claire and I are great. That's it. There's nothing. It's like, and it's not encouraged for you to constantly be speaking with these people or corresponding with these people. So by the time I was at the international headquarters for 15 years, I would maybe speak with my family once a year. My sister worked there,
mm.
and even her, I didn't talk to a lot. And sometimes she was on the RPF for many years. I didn't speak to her one time or correspond with her one single time for all the years that she was on the RPF or at a different base. If we went, she was at the Flag Land Base, so the Clearwater, Fort Harrison, that whole, cluster of buildings. If we did an event there, I might see her for 10 minutes while I was in Florida for a week where she worked. I would maybe see her for 10 minutes. So when she was at the base, I would see her every day, or we'd pass in the hallway, or, her division would be investigating me and I'd be in her division getting interrogated and she'd see me. But so when they're saying, well, you're not going to be able to talk to your family, and you kind of just go like, I talk to my family once a year. They don't even know where I've been for 15 years. They don't know anything. So what am I going to even talk to them about? And so it's, and if my mom was fully in as a Scientology Sea Org member. She eventually joined the Sea Org, and she was in Flag, and I didn't even talk to her or see her for many years. But she was so ingrained in everything that Hubbard or Miscavige does is the gospel, that I knew if I left, it would just be like, it would break her heart, and she would never, and she couldn't be able to talk to me ever again. She would just follow the rules and say, well, that's it, you're done. I'm never going to speak to you again. So Sea Org members can speak with their families. And also it's different at the international headquarters than it is for continental bases, because at continental bases, you don't have that control factor at AOSH EU or, in St. Hill, the Sea Org base there, CLO UK, or, whatever. And especially if you're a Sea Org member in an organization like Catherine Olson was at, she was a Sea Org member, but she was at an Ohio organization in the United States. And so she could go out and about and she could talk to people if she wanted to.
But even then, the control is still there. I remember a Sea Org member who worked at London Org. Her post title was Flag Banking Officer. So she was in charge of,
the FBO.
The FBO, yeah. Or DFBO for more, but I think was the other
materials or materials something in exchange.
Yeah.
I don't remember what
materials and org something in exchange. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, doesn't matter.
That's so funny that we both can't remember what the last part of it was. No one cares.
No. No, wasn't it marketing? I thought it was marketing org. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so this person, right? She was married in the Sea Org, so she had a husband who she hadn't seen in the best part of a decade, because her husband was posted at an org in Europe, I think in Germany or Denmark. And so because he was told that he had to work in this org and she was working in London org, they literally weren't allowed to speak. They might exchange a text message once a week or something, but these guys were married. Like, this is the control that the organization has over you. Yeah, she may have been able to go out for lunch if she wanted to, which you can't do at the international base, but she's still being kept from her loved ones because the
100%
org is in control.
There was probably 50 or 60 people at the international base that were married to people that worked in the Sea Org base in Los Angeles, and they never saw that person. And if you had a post where maybe you could get out on Saturday night, they had
resources. Thank you, Jeff.
Resources. Yes, resources in exchange.
Materials, org, resources in exchange.
Yeah. Good job, Jeff. Was he even in the Sea Org?
No, he was on staff.
And he knows we don't both.
He was in the Sea Org. He was in the Sea Org in LA for a short period.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so you would basically have people at the international headquarters, and in the early 90s, they would get off post at like midnight on Saturday. And if they knew somebody who also had a spouse that lived in Los Angeles, you'd get a ride with that person. And when you went to berthing at night, you went to PAC. You went to LA. So you drive 2 hours to get to LA by 2 a.m. in the morning. You could spend from 2 a.m. to maybe 9 a.m. with your spouse that lived in Los Angeles. And then you drive back to the property at 9 a.m. to get to berthing by 11 or whatever, so you could get on post by noon or be at lunch or whatever. And then, so basically that was the one. And then that, in the early 90s, people would do like, maybe they do it every week, maybe they do it every other week. But then David Miscavige caught wind of this and was just like, you're not doing that anymore. So then people went years and years and years. Maybe if the base was driven down to the Shrine Auditorium for the New Year's event, they'd get to see their spouse for the few hours that the event was taking place, or they get to sit next to their spouse at the event, and then they get back on the bus and go back to the base. So, and sometimes David Miscavige would purposely move people around to separate spouses. So it'd be like, hey, you know what? You're a great technical person. They really need somebody down in Celebrity Center. And there was a guy that was he was in the qualifications division at Gold. He's passed away now, but his name was Paul Schobel, and his wife worked in LA. And that was the only way he could see her, was at an event, or if he had to go down to Los Angeles for some reason, then he'd get to stay with her for a day or something. But it was heartbreaking that it's just like, I don't even know how. I mean, I had that situation with Claire for many years. She was in Florida and I was at the base. And then I just didn't see her. If we did an event down in Florida, I'd see her for a few days, maybe here or there. If Dave asked them to come over to where the event was taking place so he could brief them on something, then I'd see her come in, and maybe on the way out would be like, hey, how's it going? And then that's it, she's out. But and then when she came back to the property, I got sent to Denmark for months and months and months to put all the cameras and all the interrogation and auditing rooms in Denmark. And then when I got back to the property, I was on the shoot crew and we were shooting locations. So there was probably like a 3 or 4 year period where we just weren't even in the same location. And then for many years, when we were in the same location, I was restricted to the property, so I could never go home at night. So I would sleep under my desk, or I had a little crawl space above a hallway that I had made like a sort of like a bachelor pad with.
Yeah.
I literally had like a bed or like a sleeping bag, and I had an alarm clock, and I had a little clock radio that I could listen to that Coast to Coast AM show. But yeah, like I would see her every few months, and the conversation would be like, you going to be able to come home anytime soon? And I'm like, maybe in a month or two, I think I can swing it. So I'll be able to come home. And then I would be approved to come home. And then I'd come home for like 2 months. And then I'd get in trouble again. And then I'd go for another 8 months without being able to go home to our birthing. So it was just like, I'm getting now I'm getting a little bit like just thinking about it. It's just like, yeah, it was just, and for what purpose is all of this nonsense happening? Not really anything. It's just Dave Miscavige wants to jack with people. And anyway,
it's that endless stream, and that's why I really wanted to get you on to talk about these stories, because I think it's really important that the people of East Grinstead and the local dignitaries and officials that go to these events understand the reality of what life is like inside this organization. So thank you for coming on, Mark. Should we do some questions? I've been starring stuff as
sure. If anybody talks, can you hear this when I do this? Can you hear that? No. Oh, sorry.
Do you have a soundboard?
I do. I want to see. I'm not going to mess with it. If I mess with it, it'll undoubtedly break everything, and you won't be able to hear me.
All right. Well, look here, Jeff here, PTS for Life. One of the best parts about not being in Scientology is never having to go to another event again. Yes. Now that's total freedom.
Oh, that's the other thing. They have to beg and just really plead for Scientologists to come to these events. A lot of Scientologists, they don't want to come because they know when they get there, they're just going to get hit up for money. They don't care about all the speeches. They don't care about all that. They know if I go in that building, I'm not going to be able to get out without giving them some dough. So there's a lot of Scientologists that just are like, screw you. I'll watch the event on DVD in the org 10 months from now. I don't want to be there at all.
I've spoken to people who have told stories about how they weren't allowed to leave the tent without donating money. And it got so extreme at one point. People were literally trying to crawl under the skin of the tent to get out because they wanted to go home, but they couldn't without donating money. But this call-in thing is exactly what I remember doing that at London Org. Like for the weeks, as soon as the date is announced for the IAS event, it's an all hands. Like all the staff in every org in Europe will be spending hours every single day calling up everyone they know, everyone on the central file system in the org, and getting them to confirm that they're going to the event.
That's right. They haven't. A confirmed for the event. Everybody has to say, I've got 86, we've got 86 people confirmed, and every org has their quota. They have to get their entire field confirmed. And it's almost like it's a mark of shame if you couldn't get people confirmed. Like, what are you doing? You can't even get anybody to agree to come.
And there's no excuse, because if you're, you know, at Paris org or Munich or whatever, and someone goes, "Oh, I can't afford flights," no problem, because we've got a coach that'll take you there. It's a 24-hour drive.
JetBlue holiday.
Oh, honestly. Okay, Todd Johnson, in the early days, did they smoke during the events?
I don't ever remember there being smoke in the events because of the lighting and because of that stuff. I don't ever remember there being, I remember in the early days, you could smoke like in the lobby and stuff like that. And I think when they did the L. Ron Hubbard death announcement at the Palladium in Hollywood in January 1986, I do remember people smoking in and around like the lobby or right outside or stuff like that. But I don't think there was any smoking in the actual event. That would mess up that sort of, it would make the lighting more atmospheric instead of just stage lighting.
Yeah. Another great one from Todd here. I see the Davy doll behind Alex. He's just waiting to put Alex on the RPF.
Everybody needs a Davy doll. Go to the spshop.com.
May cause alarm and distress.
Double Davies. Double fake Navy Davies. Commander Space Cootie.
There we go. Virginia here saying Scientology should move their IAS gala somewhere else. This is the point that I've been trying to make to the council, because they've submitted these plans to redevelop the whole compound, to put this new car park in and so on. And, you know, the whole event is a massive disruption to the local community. My point is that they should be allowed to hold their event if they want to hold their event, but there are much better suited places to host this event. They don't need to put up this massive 45,000 square foot marquee and destroy the local environment, jam up all the roads with all this traffic. They could just hold the event somewhere else, but they'll never do that.
But this is the key thing, and I want to make sure that people understand this, because David Miscavige has sort of been doing this over the years. Is he's trying to get them to be able to do these events within their own compounds in every single place.
Right?
L. Ron Hubbard Hall. If L. Ron Hubbard Hall is actually built, then I'm pretty sure all of the U.S. events will be there. There won't be any other U.S. events. They'll all be in that hall, because they're going to optimize it, all the camera angles and the crowds, and they can fill that hall to the max. So it looks like every event they have is sold out, and when they do event, when we did events at the Shrine Auditorium, we couldn't fill it. It's Los Angeles, one of the biggest concentration of Scientologists in the world. We could not fill it. Ruth Eckerd Hall, again, big hall, another, maybe the largest concentration of Scientologists in the world, couldn't fill it. So and it would get smaller and smaller every year. And that's why these call-in things got more and more dramatic, because they weren't getting people to the events. And even when they'd have this confirmed list, a bunch of those people would just say, "Yeah, I'm coming." So they just stopped calling them, and they wouldn't come.
Yeah.
So
I would do that. When I was a public, they'd call me and be like, "You coming to this event?" I'd be like, yeah, I'll come. And they're like, "Okay, thank God they're going to stop calling me for a week."
Then you put it on the confirmed list. And then when the event happens, you're like, "What happened?" He'd be like, like L. Ron Hubbard, I must have missed a bus or a train getting there.
Yeah. Exactly. Witness here saying, "I'm super excited to watch the live stream of the IAS protest. It will be my third time watching Alex in front of St. Hill Manor. I wonder if they will play the mind-numbing bagpipe music." Well, we have a plan this year. With the event announcement, the protest announcement, we have set up a fundraiser, because Scientology love to play this really obnoxious, loud bagpipe music on repeat on these speakers outside pointed directly at us. So they clearly like bagpipes, right? So if we can raise enough money, our plan this year is to hire a bagpiper.
That would be amazing.
Down the road and join the protest.
I want to go on the record right now saying I'm in for that. I will put in the bucket. I'll put into the basket for that one. You know, it's funny. We should make a sort of like a Scientology protest bingo card that has like
I love it. Yeah.
Do they talk smack about that's offensive? Do they play bagpipes? Do they use hedge tech? Do they use, whenever the protest, when we were doing anonymous protests and when Anonymous was going after Scientology in sort of like the late 2000s, they would call anything they did. It would be the protesters would be walking down the sign. They'd turn the sprinklers on. It would be like, up, sprinkler tech. Or if they just put these fake hedges all the way around their property so you couldn't see in, they're using hedge tech or
or they put the blinds down. It's blind tech.
blinds tech or bagpipe tech or whatever. So you could just have a bingo card of like, hey, which things do they do on this event? And everybody could kind of play along. And they used to, when protesters used to go to the international headquarters, they set up these giant speaker stacks along the highway. And so people that would be protesting and live streaming it, they would just play music that would be copyrighted so that the streams would get demonetized, and then YouTube wouldn't promote them because they're not going to promote a stream that they can't show ads on. And so for a long time, they did speaker tech and music tech.
That's what they do every year at the IAS event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not just the bagpipes, they also pump in sound as well.
No, just bagpipes. It's the same 3 songs that are all copyrighted. A blast.
Oh, they're not playing bagpipes.
No. It's 3 songs, bagpipes, pre-recorded, copyrighted music that is played louder than it should do. So it's really distorted.
But isn't that a point? Like if it's over a certain amount of decibels, that's sort of
the
like
council
disturbing the peace.
Yeah, the council last year said that it was disturbing the peace and it's a disruption. And in the review of, because they tried to ban protesting last year, in the sort of end debate where councillors came together and voted not to ban protesting, the leader of the Mid Sussex District Council said with one of the biggest problems was the bagpipe music being played loud and on repeat for the whole weekend.
Yeah, they also
like the
have
bingo card idea. I love it.
Yeah, and I'll give you a few more now because I just remembered a whole bunch of new ones they did. They also did manure tech, where they would just dump truckloads and truckloads of manure on the side of the highway where the protesters would have to walk, where like we're in the middle of a landscaping project. It's like, why do you need 74 trucks of manure for some highway plants?
Yeah.
So they had manure tech. They just literally anything and everything that would disrupt people from traveling on the outside of their property. They would, I mean, even at the Gold Base, they put a bunch of stuff on the easement side of the property that wasn't their land, wasn't Scientology's land.
They did that at St. Hill. They
moved the fences so far out, and it was like, hey, that's not even your property. You can't be building on an easement. You need to back your stuff up. And at the end base, they actually kind of got lit up for it, and they had to move their fences, I want to say 20 feet back, so that, and then it made like a highway of a protesting area for everybody, because it was like, and I don't remember, it was similar, like an eagle eye protester, like the Alex version in the States, that was like, hey, I pulled the property records from the county, and I determined using GPS coordinates that their fence is 7 feet into the easement.
That's literally what I've done.
It's wild. But they will, and that's another thing. Scientology will push the limits of the law past what they're supposed to, just on the notion that no one's gonna know. No one's gonna look into this and figure this out. It's just sort of a weird thing, like, oh, the fence is here, so nobody's going like, wait a minute.
Yeah, it's nuts. They'll just do whatever they can to obstruct protesters.
And if somebody catches them, then okay, fine. We had a good run. We had our fence in the right place, in the place we wanted it for 7 years. Now we got to move it. No big deal. Whatever. We get a slap on the wrist, and then we go back to doing nonsense again.
Kestrel 42 question: why is there childcare offered for 2 nights but not the 3rd and last night? If folks travel with kids for the events, what are they supposed to do with their kids on the last night? I think this is talking about Scientology providing childcare for kids attending the IAS event at Greenfields, the school in Forest Row, but they're only providing it for the Friday and the Saturday, not the Sunday. My guess would be the Sunday is the charity concert, so they would want kids to go to that because it's meant to be a community event, fundraising, for local charities. It's a little bit more kid friendly than the Patrons Ball, which is a black tie
Yeah.
dinner, or that's just a
That
guess.
that makes sense to me as well. But I would play the devil's advocate and say they want them to get there so they can recruit all those kids for the Sea Org on that last day before they skedaddle out of town.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've heard recently of kids as young as 14 and 15 are still being recruited into the Sea Org, and they have some bogus accredited school program that they can basically just teach the kids exactly what they need to pass this test that this school is going to administer, and so they can get their GED or their high school equivalent diplomacy, and then they can just come right into the Sea Org. This is within the last few months that we've heard people talking about this. So they're still trying to get at least 14, 15, 16-year-old children into the Sea Organization as of 2025. So I wouldn't doubt that some of those older kids are getting, hey,
recruited. Yeah,
you're
for sure.
here. Let's get to it. And your parents have just been all hyped up about all the great stuff that the Sea Org is doing. So they're in the frame of mind to be like, yeah, I would love.
And they've probably just donated a bunch of money to the IAS as well.
Exactly.
So they're probably all geared up and said, hey, you should join the Sea Org to their kids.
It's funny you mention that, because in the Scientology world, if you're rich and you can give a lot of money to the Sea Org, then they're not going to really, or to the IAS or to Scientology in general, they're not really going to try to get your kids in, because you're a whale. You're giving lots of money. But if you're a broke Scientologist, if you give the kids, that's worth $1 million in the social status of public Scientologists. You're a baller because you gave 2 kids to the Sea Org. So
what happens a lot in the UK, like I remember the majority of staff at London Org were all kids of wealthy Scientology donors. So they were on staff. Like the way they justified it was like, well, our parents are the ones donating all the money to keep the org afloat. So our kids don't need to donate. Like, they can work on staff. They can run the orgs. So they're under pressure, and they think, well, as soon as as long as the parents are donating money, what am I going to do with my life? Well, obviously I'll work for Scientology. Like, yeah, that's the mindset.
We've seen that too, where the kids can't really tell the parents what's going on in the org. They've given millions and millions of dollars. The kids can't say, yeah, there were 3 people in the org this whole week. Yeah. Like 3. We're supposed to have 250 every day, and there were 3 all week that we're actually doing a paid thing. Like, sure, you can get people to come in and watch a free film. That's like, who gives a shit? But if there are 3 paying members of Scientology in the organization, that organization is a total and utter failure. And these kids can't say to their parents, like, yeah, the ideal org thing is the biggest scam of the Scientology universe. There's all of these ideal orgs are bone dry empty every day of the week.
Yeah. And most Scientologists think it's just their org, but it's not. It's
every single Scientology org these days, besides Florida, besides Flag, where there's insane pressure for the richie riches to be going to course and let's do your superpower, smell all the smells and do all the gravity exercises, and then do the cause resurgence run down and run around the light for 3 weeks straight. Besides that, and that's another thing. I don't know if we've talked about this on your channel, but the Florida, the Flag land base, the Clearwater cluster of Scientology organizations and all that, it makes more money in a week than every single other org in the world combined. So if Flag's making $2 million a week, everybody else is not even making $1 million.
Yeah.
That's how popular these ideal orgs are. And David Miscavige was trying to make each ideal org like a baby Florida, but a baby Flag in their place. And that never, ever, ever happened. And it's never likely to happen in any time in our lifetimes.
And you'll notice that if you are a Scientologist and you are watching this, very unlikely, but just in case, and you go to the IAS event, notice all of the stats that are shown on screen. You don't get the stats like, this org made $1 million, or this org, gave 3,000 hours of auditing sessions every week. No. It's always they 10x their stats.
Yes.
Or they're delivering 150% more than last year. They
Yes.
never give you the actual number, because in
Yeah.
reality, it's gone from 10 books one week to 15 books the next week.
Yeah, or one book last week,
Yeah.
and it was 8 books. They 8x their book
Exactly.
sales, and it's just
Exactly.
like, yeah, you sold one book, and now you sold 8 books, and
Yeah.
and you sold them to sign. This is the other kind of stupid thing. When it's a specific flavor of an event and they want to highlight books, they're just selling those books to people who already
got
have
them.
those books just to get the stats up. And they'll tell those people, hey, we want you to buy 10 Dianetics books. And he's like, I have Dianetics. I read it 30 years ago. Yeah. Well, we're going to sell you 10, and
Yeah.
then we're going to donate those to libraries. So it'll go to all the local libraries.
And
so
then we get the 10 stat. Yeah.
The person's like, okay, here's $200 for Dianetics books. And then literally they didn't read them. They didn't get them, but it gets the stats up. So
Yeah.
that's Scientology does that with everything. Or the person, this is another thing that was really big in the 2000s, was that person's passed away. They're no longer alive, but they had $8,000 on account when they passed away. And so that person is going to buy $8,000 worth of books. And they had a thing. I don't even know if I've told this publicly, but they had a thing where in Florida, the Sea Org members there were put on, every Sea Org member in the Flag Land Base was ordered, you have to sell a set of these basic books and lectures every single week. You have to sell one of these things. Otherwise, you don't get to go home at the end of the week, or sometimes it was daily. You wouldn't get to go home unless you sold one. If you sold a set, then you could go home. But if you didn't sell a set, you couldn't go home. And they were selling so many fraudulent sets and selling to people that were passed away, or people that had money on account, but they couldn't get a hold of, and they weren't even in Scientology anymore. And they'd sell that person a set. They were selling so many fraudulent packs of these lectures that FedEx had to have a semi come to the Flag Land Base every day for the returns.
No.
They had a semi returning. FedEx would send a semi of all the returns that they were getting, because they were selling hundreds and thousands of fraudulent sets. And FedEx couldn't use a normal truck for all the people that were returning, because they'd sell it to these people that weren't in Scientology anymore, and they'd get them and they'd say, screw you, and they would just refuse the delivery. Like, I didn't order these. And sometimes people would get multiple sets. So a FedEx truck would show up to somebody's house with
like thousands of books and lectures,
40 boxes of Scientology books and lectures, and that they hadn't ordered. And they've been trying to get this money back from Scientology for 10 years. And now they find out Scientology just sent them all this $10,000 worth of stuff to zero out all the credit that they had on their account. It's wild.
Nice. Todd Johnson gifted 20 memberships. Wow, thank you so much.
How does that work if somebody gifts memberships? 20 people get memberships for free?
Yeah, you can't choose who they go to. It just randomly assigns 20 people in the chat a membership for a month. So thank you so much, Todd. That's very kind of you.
I didn't know how it worked. During an Aftermath stream, a bunch of people did that, and I was like, how does this work?
Yeah, you can buy yourself a membership, and then you can gift memberships to 5, 10, 20, however many people you want, and then it just gets randomly assigned. So thank you for that. And T302, thank you for your super chat. All right, last two. Terry Ray quotes you saying diabolically cruel, 2 words that say so much. Yeah, this is the leader of the Church of Scientology, right? This is the guy that trots up on stage and, talks for 3 hours about how wonderful this organization is. And here's someone who worked closely with him describing him as diabolically cruel, right? I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, David Miscavige is like Two-Face. To the public, he's like, yes, these guys, they're doing amazing. And the Sea Org here and Golden Era Productions, look at the amazing videos they're doing. And then in the next hour, he's sending the people that he was just praising to the RPF for, messing up a lighting cue or whatever. It's like, what? He literally puts on a show, and then behind the scenes, he's just He is diabolically cruel to people.
Jeez. And finally, I think this is a good one to end it on. Becky, Big Brother fan, saying, "Hey Osa, if you want to avoid the craziness of the IAS 2025 event, please reach out to the Aftermath Foundation for assistance leaving Scientology."
Yeah.
That is
Yeah, Osa's watching all of this. It's the craziest thing.
100%. Like, they included transcripts of my videos and podcasts I've done with Tony Ortega and such in their request for a protest ban. So we know they watch all of these things. So hi, Osa. Thank you for giving me a view.
Yeah.
And for paying
Osa,
such
also
close
hot
attention.
tip, pro tip. The aliens are good for you. So getting rid of them is not helping at all. You need more you need more space cooties, not less.
And Xenu is our homeboy.
Absolutely. 100%.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining me. I've really, really enjoyed this. If anyone wants to catch the protest, we'll be there outside St. Hill on the 31st of October. I'll be doing lots of live streams in the next week or two as we lead up to it. Hopefully we can see you there. If you're in Scientology and you want to leave, contact the Aftermath Foundation and go and subscribe to Mark's channel, Blown for Good. It's in the description. Thank you so much, guys. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, guys. Bye.